The people are actually very important, and it could never be an AI only organization.
Welcome to Channel Protect me from the where CTOs share the tales and the comments of startups to big names, innovations unfold. How many CTOs will share the stories untold?
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast. I'm Brad Hefta-Gaub, and our regular co-host, Scott Porat, is not here today, but we have a special guest, John Von Seggern, who is the founder, CEO, and CTO of Future Proof Music School, I guess.
Yes,
So
that's right. I have to do a lot of the things, although I do have a partner who does a few of them, but yeah, I have to do the CTO CEO job.
love it, love it. Well, why don't you introduce yourself, John? Maybe tell us a little bit about kind of your journey to this point of Future Proof Music School, and then we can talk a little bit more about what you're building and how you're building it.
I have been a musician all my life, and I was a pro bass player for the first 10 years of my career. But I've also always been really into technology and learning about and using the latest technologies. And so then I became a computer musician, electronic music producer at some point, and sound designer. I've had a lot of different roles in the industry, but finally, in the last years, I ended up working in education and specifically online education of electronic music producers. That's the specific niche that I work in. And within online education, I've always been trying to adopt new technologies for learning. I get really excited about things that can help you learn quicker and understand things easier. And so in the last few years, that's all been about AI. And
Love it.
so I've been developing various AI features and functions and bots that you can interact with to help you learn.
Love it. There you go. Well, it usually only takes a couple minutes in the podcast before we start talking about AI, so we landed there. We landed there pretty quickly. Cool. Well, tell me a little bit about the process. Obviously, with your background, you didn't have a classic sort of engineering background, but obviously dealing with electronic music and dealing and now building this platform yourself. What have you? Tell me a little bit about that process. I'm curious to hear how you've evolved and what how that's affected your ability to build your enterprise.
Yeah, it's been quite a process of change in the last year, especially. So all my life, pretty much, I've been a power user of technologies. I have worked as a technical writer and a customer support manager at a software company and a knowledge base writer and various roles like that. I was never actually a developer. I never actually wrote code. About the furthest I went is sometimes I was copying and pasting JavaScript out of things to make little scripts work, but that's about as much as I could do. And in my mind, I always thought, God, I wish I would have gotten into developing at some point, but it seems like such a deep and vast subject. I've already invested in being a musician and producer. I can't really spend the time to learn to be a coder. So anyway, fast forward to more recently, when I had the idea to start Future Proof Music School a couple of years ago, I had always thought my CTO would be a friend of mine named Steven, and he is a developer down in Florida. He made a platform called MIDI,
Oh
which
yeah.
is for online keyboard learning. And he's a great developer. And I worked with him on his platform, but my work was more like, well, hey, what if it did this? And
Right.
then he would implement it. So, and I had all the users, so I would do testing and get user feedback and stuff for him. But anyway, I thought we would do this together. And then when it came time, I was, okay, Steven, I'm finally going to leave my company, and start this new school. And he had had a baby and also decided that he needed to finally leverage his talents to make some actual money. And so he got a really good job in cybersecurity, which is great for him. But
Having kids will do that to you. Make you
yeah,
feel like you
yeah, no doubt. So he couldn't forge on with his low-paying startup life any longer at that point. But anyway, then he couldn't really be part of this. So this was about, a couple of years ago. I wanted to integrate. I know how to use online platforms and design courses, all that stuff is pretty easy. but I wanted to integrate AI into it. That was the main thing I wanted to work on. And so at first I thought, well, I could hire somebody to do a little bit of work on this or that. But I realized like not only would that be expensive, but the way these technologies are evolving, it's not like we're just trying to build a chatbot or something and then that's it. Like I could see this is gonna be a continual process of evolution. It's gonna improve every month. We'll be able to do things we couldn't do the month before. So that means I'm gonna have to develop it all because otherwise, how could we keep changing it and iterating it?
Yeah.
And so at first, I started working with no code platforms. Like I used Zapier for a long time.
Yeah,
So I
sure.
thought, oh, maybe I can use something like that. And then I got into using N8N, which is a little more powerful.
Mhm.
And you could make AI agents in that. And I still use that some. But what's really been powerful is since like 6 months or so ago, when Claude Code started to get really powerful, then I started to switch over to use that directly. And since then, I've built most everything with that or some other, I use other agentic coding platforms now too, but
Yeah.
mostly I'm using Claude Code. And I've taught myself how to architect software projects and, um, make a detailed plan of what I'm trying to do. And I've kind of learned the common obstacles you run into. I've learned how to design a test suite. And so, become some kind of software developer. Good enough for my own uses anyway. I've been able to accomplish the things that I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that that to me that's a pretty interesting example of what I am a believer that kind of the technology's capable of doing. I'm kind of curious. Would you like to say more about? I'm curious more about what future-proof music schools platform. What does it do? How do I use it? What kind of features does it have? Tell me a little bit more about the actual product.
Basically, what it does is we're trying to help people reach their musical goals as directly as possible. So instead of having a fixed program of courses, which is pretty much the case at all the schools I've worked at before, um, you take some survey at the beginning and it recommends a program of courses for you that it thinks you need. You can add more to it. You can talk to the AI. As it gets to know you better, then you can talk to it about what courses you might need to accomplish your own ends. And so we have an AI chatbot that works by text or voice. It's named Cadence, and it is integrated with the curriculum as well as the students' history on the platform. And then we use that in various ways. So that the simplest way is every unit you're on, you might watch a video and learn something, and then you can, if you don't understand it, the chatbot can explain it to you more, or can explain how it relates to your music or how you might use that concept in your own music.
Sounds really, really interesting. I'm kind of curious. So, clearly there's kind of the classic like learning module, learning system, like the your
Yeah.
lessons, your all that. Are you using something white labeled something off the shelf, or have you also homegrown that component? I'm kind of curious
No,
as to
I'm using a platform for that. I'm quite because I've had these different jobs, I'm really familiar with that space and
hmm
what platforms are available. I'm using a platform called LearnWorlds,
hmm
which I really like. They have been really at the forefront of adopting new features and AI and otherwise into their platform, and
hmm
it's extremely flexible. A lot of my LearnWorlds pages, I have the thing in LearnWorlds, but I have something embedded from somewhere else, that
hmm
I've made. But LearnWorlds kind of makes it all hang together. And also LearnWorlds keeps track of the subscriptions and the payment authorizations and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, cool. And then obviously you had to integrate your agent with it, right? So it's
yeah,
got to be able to have like the context of the, the courses, the coursework, the courses that the student has taken.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like an obviously interesting integration problem.
Yeah, and so what's interesting about that is that working working with these AIs, it's kind of like a plumbing problem in a
Yeah.
way. You have various things that come in. I mean, on some level, it's quite simple actually, because you have some things that come in, and then you have a black box that does something, and then you have things that come out. And if you're careful, you can get it to give very precise outputs in the right format that you want. But what's interesting is that you can't just load it with all the context in the world and hope for the best. It actually works the best if it has the least context possible, but just the relevant context that it needs at
Right.
that moment. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
in some way, it's not a hard technical problem. It's more of a logic problem of trying to think like, what should the agent know and when should it know it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's super interesting. I'm kind of curious. I assume, like, when I wear my CTO hat, I immediately like kind of go to, oh, how would I solve this problem?
Hmm.
So, um, obviously, like you're dabbling in essentially, kind of the RAG space of trying to provide the LLM some context and stuff like that. I also jumped to the idea of like implementing, like, I don't know if Learning World has like an MCP server or something like that, but it strikes me that like if if you were able to give the agent tools, MCP style tools to say, query against the content, the learning content, query against the student, that might be that's kind of the way my brain immediately jumps to. Now, MCP servers are kind of newish, so I don't know if they were really practical when you start working on this. But I'm just kind of curious: is have you looked at using MCP? Do you use MCP servers in it? Have you looked at that as part of the pathway to it?
So first of all, I have two AIs. I have the public-facing agent, which helps the students, and then of course we have another one that works with me and helps run the school, right?
Sure.
And that one uses tons of MCP servers because it's tapped into all of our services. But LearnWorlds did not have an MCP server, so I made one actually. That was one of my software projects. And it's not really, I mean, I can't say that I understand the exact details of how it works, but basically, you're just gathering together the API endpoints into a bundle and you're saying this is the MCP server. I couldn't access the content of the pages though,
Oh,
because
yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
LearnWorld doesn't let you do that. So this turned out to be more, I've done all this stuff now, but it turned out to be more complicated than I thought because initially I just thought, oh, it'll just read the page that you're on and then it'll know,
Right.
it seems so easy. But
Right.
because it can't pull it from the page. So instead I had to make this whole thing where I made a web scraper
Mm-hmm.
that logs in as me. This is the only solution I could find. It logs in as me every week and scrapes my own website and makes a mirror database of the content of every page. And then my agent actually searches that. And
Yeah.
it just has like the text content of every lesson basically. And then it
Sure.
matches it just matches the URL you're on. It's like, oh, you're on this page, then it must be this. But that
It's
seems so easy, but setting that up was such a pain in the butt.
totally. Well, it's like I take your point earlier about like kind of working with these things. It's kind of like, you know, they're kind of designed around the notion of like input, process, output. And so if you just kind of can glue it together correctly, and so you had
Right.
this problem like you needed to get the input of the content of all the learning modules. There was no way to do that with the particular LMS that you had, and therefore and they didn't have an MCP server, and therefore you had to like come up with a solution. So scrape it, create a side database, do that. It's like that's definitely like a kind of uh, uh, you know figure out how to plug the things together to get the data that you wanted.
It actually brings up an important point though, because for a lot of online platforms and services, I think making it, exposing it to AI agents is going to be a huge feature to have.
Yeah, I mean, I have to assume that like hopefully the learning management systems out there are like, yes, we're gonna figure out how to be, you know, AI enabled and would give would hopefully Learning World is gonna build an MCP server.
They're putting their own AI features in it, but they weren't anticipating that somebody like me would want to control it all. Like the thing that bugs me the most at the moment actually is like I would like to be able to take a bunch of my notes and then create the courses with my AI assistant, but it doesn't have the endpoints to do that. So I've been the last few days I've been trying to teach Claude how to use the admin interface of our site through browser use,
Totally.
which is
Yeah.
kind of slow and chunky, but it mostly works, but it gets discouraged and it keeps coming back and it says it would be so much easier if you just did that. I'm sure it would, but it wouldn't be easier for me because then I would have to do it. I would really prefer if you would do it.
That is so funny to hear. Yeah, obviously, like things are changing so fast in this space, and I know that one of the things that the different models, whether it be either Claude Code or the Claude Code application or Codex, all of them are sort of building out this like how much can we do on your behalf, right? How much can we run
Hmm.
the browser on your behalf? And I think I just saw something recently, like in the last couple days, about a new a new feature in Claude desktop that basically just like starts, controlling your computer mode
Yeah.
and just like starts doing it. And I'm sure that you're not the only one that's run into that problem, right? Like that's part of the where that stuff is coming from is people like yourself being like, "Hey, I want to do this thing. There's no backend, there's no CLI, there's
Mm.
no MCP server, but it would be available through the browser, So it's definitely interesting how these things are moving. You obviously have a big background in doing electronic music, using software tools to
Hmm.
make music and to help people make music and to teach people how to make music. Do you think that has given you a advantage over other, say, non-technical entrepreneurs? Like if you were a veterinarian and you were trying to like build a platform for veterinarians, maybe your background in the sort of deep software use that you already had and being a technical writer, do you think that's given you an advantage in figuring out how to use these tools, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, what that makes me think of in music, when you're putting together a piece of music in your music software, you have like the tracks of each part, and then you're usually putting some effects and processing on each one to
Yeah,
make
totally.
them work together and sound cool. And very often you're in a mindset where you're thinking through the path of the sound. So you're thinking like, oh, it comes out here and then it goes through this thing and then you know what I mean? And then it comes out as this. That's why it sounds like that.
Yeah, yeah,
And
totally,
that's
totally.
very similar to working with those automation platforms where
Totally,
you have
totally.
some kind of thing that's tracing a path and going through branches and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Or just working out the logic of how something's going to work.
totally. One of the things that I think is out there in the zeitgeist, and I want to ask this in the spirit of like, just to be clear, like, I think it's really cool what you're doing, and I think that you're a good example of like a proof point of how AI coding has uh kind of democratized like building software, and but I'm kind of curious, do you have concern? Like one of the things that's in the zeitgeist is, developer-y type people, classically trained engineers saying, "Oh, these things, these vibe coded things are all just going to be fragile and brittle. They're not going to, they might have exposed security issues or they might have, scalability flaws." Do you worry about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think those are very valid concerns, no doubt. But I have personally spent quite a bit of time. I have spent quite a bit of time, number one, trying to understand what I'm doing. So I understand the different systems I'm using and how they work together. And I'm not just like vibe coding, I'm like making a detailed plan before I start.
Sure,
If you're
totally.
not doing that, then it's very easy to get into some slop mode where you don't really understand what's happening and everything is just like running like spaghetti. The security issues are very real. And I think my stuff is in good shape because I've done a lot of security audits of my own things. And I have Codex and Claude audit each other very
Yeah,
often.
sure. That's a good technique.
And then I've found various checklists of like, here's 25 things you better make sure you did ship your app. I'm about to ship my first desktop app actually, and I'm really paranoid about that because once it goes on somebody's computer, then they have a piece of my code, right? And then also my desktop app is using Gemini Live voice.
Mm,
And if somebody got a hold of my Gemini key, there's all these horror stories of people losing
sure.
$100,000 in Google Cloud fees
Right.
because their Gemini. That's like the number one thing I'm worried about is your Gemini key gets
Right.
lost or hacked.
Right.
So I have been super paranoid about those. I rotate my keys, but it would be I think it's very easy yeah, it's very easy if you don't know what you're doing to get into something where you've done something really risky and stupid and you don't realize it. So I think that's very valid. But there's ways, if you're thoughtful, you can learn the things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. That's a great point. Like if you're thoughtful, you can learn how to do it right.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can have Claude teach you how to do it. But I think also about the code, another point that's good to think about it is with the code being fragile or malformed in some way, I'm sure that the things I'm building are not the most elegantly constructed. I don't even understand how they're constructed at some level. But the models are getting smarter as you go along. And so already with some of the apps that I made from the beginning, I loaded it. Lately, I've been using Codex more. It seems like it has a little bit of an edge right now. So I loaded into Codex and I'm like, hey, we made this over the last 6 months. What if I'd like you to analyze exactly what it does and let's figure out a new way to make it that would be more elegant and work better and not have all these crazy issues or whatever. And as the models get smarter, it's easier to refactor things or rebuild them. So ultimately, you'll just be able to be like, "Hey, make this so it doesn't have any problems." You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
It's funny you say that. I was I was listening to some other developers kind of talk about this problem, and one of them was like saying, and I think I agree with this perspective. They were just like, look, actually the code that these things are writing right now is pretty good code. Now, a year ago, 18 months ago,
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
it didn't look that good, but now it's actually pretty good code. And then, as they were talking about it, they were joking around about it. They said one of the guys said, like, have you looked like how many times? And I could say this as a CTO who's been dropped into many organizations. I'd show up and like do a sample of the code and you'd look at it and be like, "Oh my God, this is garbage." Well, it was written by engineers. It wasn't written by AI. So
Yeah.
like human engineers wrote junk code plenty, for decades, So it's it's a little bit of a I think it's a little bit of a pot shot to say like, "Oh, the AI is going to write bad code." No, in fact, the AI writes pretty good code compared to the average developer.
But you know what happens is that the AI will just if you don't understand what you're doing and you're just like, hey, we need to make sure this works, it'll just reach for the most expedient short-term solution sometimes, and then you end up with all these little things glued together or something. Whereas if you started from the beginning and you were like, we're making this thing and it's gonna work like this and have all these things, then it can just architect the whole thing perfectly from the beginning.
Yeah, I think
So
that's a fair point. I've also seen cases where it over-engineers things. So it under-engineers, it over-engineers, and the point that I
yeah.
think you're making is that as the orchestrator of the whole thing, you have to kind of give it, like you said, the right context. You have to kind of be clear about your guardrails, be clear about what, your big picture plan is, and then it'll have a better shot at actually like staying on target.
You said about the famous phrase, the democratization of code, which is the same thing that's the democratization of video production and the democratization of music writing and everything else. But at least in code, yeah, it's been super empowering for me. But unless I got more education about what I'm doing or more training, I don't think I could do really bigger projects than what I'm doing.
Hmm.
Like I made a dashboard for my students. That's like within my wheelhouse,
Hmm.
but um I couldn't make like a secure payment platform that thousands of people used every day.
Sure,
Like, you know
totally.
what I mean? So there is a limit to how far you can push this. And also I read a lot of posts from people online about using these things, and it's become pretty apparent to me like the people that started out that were already developers, like my friend Steven, are able to do 10 times more than I am because they
Sure.
already had that knowledge. I envy the people that are or who seem to be setting up these pipelines, where it's like my design agent does this and my coding agent builds it and my testing agent does this, and I was like, wow, that sounds so cool. I don't really quite have the time or the knowledge to build that.
It's interesting the way you're framing that. Like someone who already has the experience, they probably are going faster. I've been saying that for a while. I feel like I've kind of described it as like the K-shaped economy of agentic coding. Like the
Hmm.
people that were already strong engineers who lean into it are gonna be accelerating even faster. And
Yeah, yeah.
the folks that were, didn't have that background are gonna I think it's not just about engineering experience, although I think that's a big key part of it. But I think maybe your story is an example of how powerful curiosity is, and
Mm.
you basically have approached this problem with, an open mind and a curious mind and a problem solving mind, right? So you're just like, I'm gonna figure out how to do this, and I'm gonna work on it until I can figure it out. And I think that's probably benefiting you really well. And even if you, I mean, I have seen in my own immediate experience people with lots of engineering experience who simply didn't want to have a curious mind about it, and
Hmm.
that's nothing to do with AI. Um, as waves of new technology have come through the industry, I've been writing code for more than 40 years. I've been, leading engineering teams for more than 35 years. And how many times have we had new technologies that come along, um, and each of those waves of new technology, experienced engineers in the old technology will sometimes resist the new technology. The ones that are curious and embrace the new technology are the ones that you see this rapid acceleration in. And I think that's certainly the case for um, agentic coding and AI.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that what's really interesting too is that the basic skill or concept of like supervising the agents doing things for you, obviously you can apply that to so many areas. It's not only about code.
Right.
And if you can get your mind around that and figure out how to do it, it's incredibly powerful. I'm sure you understand exactly what I'm talking about. But and then you look around at, the people and it's like whoever if they can grasp this one thing, they'll be then 10x, more productive of whatever they're doing. And so yeah, that's why yeah, you follow into like wanting to evangelize your friends and stuff. But yeah, I guess the curiosity is a lot of it. I don't know what else it is, but we can talk about democratization of coding, but I don't feel like most people are going to be doing this. It's still pretty complicated to think about how
Yeah.
to set up all this stuff and use it. It might be like it's easier to make an app using Claude than it is to write the app by hand, but it's still pretty complex if you want it to work right. So
Yeah, I think that's that's a point that's well made. Um, that at least today, it's still pretty complicated to get this stuff up and running. Now there's services out there like Replit and Lovable and things like that that are really trying to lean into the, just describe it and get yourself an app. I like your point. I want to kind of circle back to the point you just made about managing the agents is a lot like, well, I think I know this is my opinion, and so I might have just confirmation biased heard what I wanted to hear, but it sounded like you were saying that a part of the becoming effective using AI agents in particular is thinking about and being capable of actually thinking about managing these agents that are doing work on your behalf. And that applies not just to code, but that applies to any back office thing, right? Like you,
yeah,
you,
yeah.
you mentioned that you have agents that are helping you run the business.
Well, my initial thought, since I've been working on this now for at least a year, so the backend agent we call Nova, and initially I was building it in N8N, and I had this brain, and I just kept connecting more services to it, more MCPs, and more different things. But that started to get really bogged down, and after a point, it didn't work. It my fantasy of it was if we just plug everything into it, it'll be able to read all of our data and tell us what to do. You know what I mean?
Right. Totally.
But then it's like, oh, well, this doesn't work, and it's like it's got too much of this, and there were so many problems with it. So then when I got Claude Code, I just started doing that maybe in January. So then I started over with Claude Code, and I said, okay, we're gonna make a brain that controls everything and reads everything and helps us with everything, and I just kind of designed it together with Claude. Claude and I together, we focused on what are we trying to do with this? Like,
Sure.
what could it conceivably do for the business that would be useful? What would be the most useful? and and then one by one we've just added all these different capabilities to it. And these days, so many new things happen, which I usually learn about. I was just working on this earlier because it had a bug, but I read about things on X and I bookmark them, and then I have this process for my agent, and every day it reads all my new X bookmarks and evaluates each one. And if one of them is like, here's a new skill for Claude Code, it'll just go find it and install it for itself,
Oh, nice.
So
I love it.
it's like things are moving so fast, like I don't have time even to fully understand these things myself. It's like, wow, this is a great thing that we could probably use. Well, you go figure it out, and if we can use it, then let me know.
I love it. That's awesome. That's awesome. I think you mentioned earlier you have a couple other people on the team. Do you want to say any more about sort of what is the shape of Future Proof Music School? How are you, other than Nova and yourself?
It's
And
kind of a
there's
hype.
and no wrong
It's
answers to this, right? Like the
Well, it's kind of a hybrid organization because the people are actually very important, and it could never be an AI only organization because we're teaching young artists how to be artists.
yeah.
And so I believe that they need to learn that from older, more experienced artists. The AI more functions teaching the more foundation concepts. It's probably the most useful for that. And as people get more advanced, then they need to study with the human teachers more. We have a lot of live Zoom workshops every week, and the students have one-on-one mentor sessions with the teachers. The AI supports the teachers by, for example, when they're going to have a one-on-one meeting, the AI reads all the student records and emails the teacher and says, so-and-so's having a hard time with sound design. Why don't you try to help them with that?
Oh, that's awesome.
Something like that. But anyway, yeah, to answer your question, so I have a co-founder who was one of my top teachers at my last school and is a well-known dubstep artist. So he's the director of marketing and he runs the social media and he's kind of the community manager and he's designed quite a few of the courses as well. We've got a few other teachers that just work on contract, like just whenever we
Mhm.
need teachers or doing workshops or whatever. One of the things I've tried to do, actually, more to the point of this podcast, like my idea all along, like I had a number of people, I know a lot of people in this space because I've had these different jobs. So I have however many teachers I need. I can find teachers that I've worked with before. But I kept thinking if I could get one of my people to be as into AI as I am, then they would be able to do 10x more work. And I have actually succeeded with my partner.
I love it.
So he is a dubstep, and he's kind of like me. He's a dubstep producer, and he's really good with music software and music production, but he never did any coding or anything like that, less than me. And in the last few months, I got him really into Claude Code, and now I think he actually just got a side gig making an app for some other company.
There you go. I love
He
it.
just told me that a couple of days ago. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah, so there you go. You're sort of spreading the enthusiasm.
yeah. And so he is able to do things like the reason I wanted him to do that in particular is because we're using MCP Server to access meta ads.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so you can get insane levels of analysis with that, or you forgot to switch that one little thing. Your
Right.
ad campaign isn't working, That oh my God, that's such a relief from trying to access meta and work with their thing.
That's awesome. I love it. What advice would you give a non-technical or like yourself, technical enough, but not a programmer about starting their own venture and using the current set of AI tools? What advice would you give them about how to, you know, mistakes not to make or
Actually, there's just one basic thing to know that you could remember. I think would be helpful for everyone. When I was starting to do this last year, you were just kind of going back and forth with the AI and asking a question and getting a response. But the AIs have gotten smarter. So now you're going to get the best results if you just tell the AI from the beginning what your goal is and as big as possible, So you could, if you're trying to start a donut shop, you could say, hey, Claude, I'm starting a donut shop. My goal is to have a successful, thriving, profitable donut shop.
yeah,
And then what the easiest way to do this is you just tell the AI, ask me, 100 questions about my donut shop so that you understand everything about it, and then we'll make plans after that. And it's really easy to proceed if you just have the AI ask you questions and then it dredges all the info out of your mind.
Yeah.
And I do that on all the projects when I'm doing that's kind of a standard way to proceed. But when you're doing a software project, you have the AI ask you a whole bunch of questions about it. If there's any ambiguities or you don't understand anything about our plan, I want you to ask me, and you go through and you can really hone down that way. So if you just focus on that, the AI can explain to you how it could be the most useful. Because it's going to be different. If you're having a donut shop, you could say, okay, we have a donut shop. How can you help me with the donut shop? And then it might say, oh, well, what tasks do you have to do every day? Oh, well, I have to, probably marketing the donut shop is where the AI could be the most useful for a donut shop. And so it could say, oh, I have to book ads on these things, and I have to have special deals on donuts, and maybe it would then say, oh, I could track the deals and see which deal works the best or something.
Yeah, totally.
But the AI can teach you itself, and then you can just learn one step at a time. And if you don't understand something, just ask it to explain it again.
I love it. The AI can teach you. If you don't understand it, just ask it to explain it to you. That sounds like a great set of advice for
Yeah, well, it's easy
founders.
to remember that way.
Very cool. Awesome. Is there anything else that you think that the listeners of the pod should know about Future-Proof Music School or other or more about yourself or anything else about the future? The future's so bright.
The future's so bright, I have to wear shades. Advice. My advice is mostly about mostly about music. Do you have any questions about
Yeah,
that?
tell me. I actually, yeah, tell me, what do you th it's so interesting. I thought when, I first heard about Future Proof before I went to the website, I was like, "Oh, is this going to be like an AI music generating software?" And it's clearly not that. I'm curious, what do you think about the future of AI generating music or what's
I
your
mean, on there's a lot that we could go into there, but I suppose on the broadest level, I think people will use AI to make music in various ways. For professional musicians and producers, I don't think that prompting songs is really that fun or productive. There's a lot because you don't have enough control over it. And
yeah,
also it's not really fun. It's not because you don't get into that flow state like you do like when you're playing an instrument because you're literally thinking of words. It's like you know what I mean? It's like a left brain if you're into that kind of thinking. It's a left brain function where you're trying to spell out something verbally instead of just like going with the flow and feeling it. I don't really enjoy it on that level, but I do think, I mean, on the other, if you want to look at it another way, people have been using more and more advanced technologies to make music for the last, 5 decades. And so I'm sure people are going to use AI or they already are, to make loops and parts and vocals and whatever. And some people will like it and some people won't. For the school, we have had to negotiate that because there's a lot of musicians that hate AI music, first of all.
hmm
And so we're just starting a business. We don't want to get caught up in this whole firestorm of who hates AI music. And on a more practical level, the students that we have they're really, really into learning about all the complexities of producing music. They're the kind of people that enjoy learning about that. The same kind of people
sure,
enjoy learning about the complexities of computer code, I'm sure.
yeah,
So they don't really want to use AI generators. They're not really that interested in it. I tried having some workshops on it, and nobody was that interested in it. Lately, I started having a workshop that's been more popular. That's vibe coding for music producers, and so that was more interesting. We learned how to make some audio effects,
yeah,
and we learned how to make some like more marketing oriented things. But it's another interesting thing about the AI coding is that you can potentially make your own little personal tools that nobody else would ever make
totally,
or have or care about. It's not something you're making to sell to somebody. It just does something for you.
totally. I can imagine a world where somebody who wants to create a particular audio effect or something like that, but doesn't have the background in DSP engineering, which is a complicated background, um, but has an idea of what they want this, effect to be, could totally use. AI.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually not that hard. I've done that myself, but the coding of the effects is easy now because that's pretty much a standard thing. But the thinking of what would be a cool sounding effect and how it would work, like sonically on a sound level, that's a whole nother area of technical knowledge,
Yeah,
actually.
totally.
And like my partner has, I understand that stuff pretty well myself, but I would say my partner knows a bit better than me. And so he's been able to make some cool plugins because he understands kind of on a technical level what he wants the sound to do, you
Right.
know?
I am super inspired by your story. I actually think that like it's a great example of someone with an idea and a passion to build it, and you just found the latest tools and you've run with it. And I think that's pretty cool. I am that's the part of AI that I'm bullish about. That
Yeah,
entrepreneurs like yourself will feel and find it so liberating. I think that was what you called it. You called it liberating. And I think
yeah.
that's very compelling.
Yeah, let's look on the let's look on the bright side. I mean, actually, I feel like there's all these big issues swimming around AI, from the practical issues to the philosophical issues. But the fact is, it's it's happening. Nobody's gonna stop it. And it's like electricity or something. Nobody's gonna uninvent it. And it's gonna do some good things and some bad things. And none of us is in a position to really like the bad big things that could happen. Like, yes, it might, yes, there is some chance that Skynet could happen and we could all die. It might be a very small chance, but I don't think we could completely rule it out. But I can't do anything about that. I'm not going to worry about that. Like, what, you know what I mean? What sense does that make? I'm not, and a lot of the other things, like what I can do is I can help AI help people learn about music. I can
Yeah,
help people learn about music faster by using AI. That's what I can do. That seems positive to me, and that's what I'm going to do. So,
right. That's obviously your mission, right? You care about music, you care about teaching people music, and more power to you, basically. I think that's the way to sum it up, John. I think no one's going to uninvent it. And so those of
yeah.
us with a passion to do good in the world and to try to help people, grow and learn or achieve goals, let's let's use this powerful tool to help them achieve their goals. And
Actually, now that you said that, I would add one more thing, which is just that sometimes we see these stories like big tech is going to use AI to create, the George Orwell's surveillance world or something, and definitely you could see, yeah, people, bad people could use AI to do bad things, but I think that makes it all the more important. If you're a person that wants to make the world a better place, I think you should be, I hope they will be embracing this technology and trying to do good things with it. Because if people that want to make the world a better place just avoid AI, I think it'll just be left to the bad actors. That's
that's
that's what I would say. So
there you go. I love it. Well, it's great talking to you, John. Thanks a lot for coming
yeah, great
on.
conversation.
And everyone else listening, we'll see you next week on another episode of the How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast. Remember to smash that subscribe button, rate and review. All right, John, nice meeting you.
Okay, have a good day. Later.
Thanks.
Peace.
This episode of the How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast was produced and edited by Saffron Hefta-Gaub. Our theme song was AI generated by Brad. Please follow us on all the social media platforms at How Many CTOs Pod. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, TikTok, and Patreon, or at our website at howmanyctospod.com. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. Thanks for listening.